Arizona State University hosted a lecture by American astronaut Catherine Coleman as part of the 2012 TEDx at Barrett Honors College. Coleman is among the top female astronauts in the world. She was selected to join NASA in 1992 after officially retiring as a colonel from the Air Force. During her career as an astronaut, Coleman has earned 5 mission insignias and logged more than 180 days in space, of which 159 days were on board the International Space Station. Coleman holds a degree in chemistry from MIT and a PhD in polymer science and engineering from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. ASU News had the opportunity to speak with Coleman about her outreach efforts on behalf of NASA and the future of space exploration in the United States. Some of the things that you brought up in your lecture was this idea of not just discovery, but the things that we can associate between the International Space Station and the exploration of actually Earth as well, and actually connect that as well with space exploration. Now, I think in the mind of most people, it is easy to understand the connection between the station and space exploration, but not necessarily always connect the research that is conducted in the station with matters that take place here at home. If you could synthesize a little bit some of those wonderful experiments that you were discussing and allow people to understand the importance of the space station and the research that is currently being conducted up in space.
One of my favorite examples is fluid physics. Okay, we're doing experiments we just can't do down here on the ground, because down here on the ground, gravity works on sort of a drop of water or a big blob of water, and it's just going to be a puddle on the ground. But up in space, we can understand, what do liquids really want to do? Now, for space exploration, we care because we want to understand, how do we carry fuel around to get to Mars, and how do we know how much we have, and how do things that circulate fluid work up there? But down here on the ground, we do all sorts of things with fluids that we don't understand well enough. One of those things is taking oil out of the ground. Any kind of putting liquids through porous media. We need to understand the really tiny parts of fluid physics, the parts that are very hard to measure compared to the force of gravity. It affects wanting to have sort of a lab on a chip and be able to put a drop of blood or something on there and understand how somebody's doing. And it's also going to affect literally every process that involves flow through a pipe. Anything in a factory that we're making that involves pushing water through a pipe, any sewage everything that is flow through a pipe, there's little forces we don't understand. They make a big difference, and up in space, they're big enough to understand.
One particular set of experiments that you identified with and you actually spoke about extensively was bone density and how gravity affects the human body in very interesting ways. You also spoke about your own experiences in space and how you're very fascinated with how your own bone structure may have already changed a bit because of the more than 180 days you spent in the International Space Station. Talk to us a little bit about that and synthesize a bit what is so fascinating about the effects of zero gravity on the human body, and what could astronauts further learn in the years to come about how to treat certain ailments, particularly related to mass and bone density.
Well, bone metabolism, how bone grows and how it also degrades, because our bones are actually doing that all the time, is a subject that is really complicated. We need, and we're trying to understand, what are the things that tell us to build strong bones, and what are the things that tell us that building strong bones don't matter, or how to keep that from happening. And so up in space, without gravity, it turns out that we lose a lot of bone mass, about 10 times as much as, say, a woman who's 70 years old that has osteoporosis. So for us, the bone loss happens very quickly, and it makes it easier to measure. So we can take urine samples, blood samples, different things like that. We can look at, what's the effect of taking this drug? What's the effect of doing this kind of exercise? I don't want to imply that we've solved this problem, because it's a very complicated problem. But because things are a little accelerated up there, and because we tend to have fairly normal medical histories that make it a little easier to isolate, okay, we changed this circumstance, what happened to her bone loss that should have been great? So we're just a really good laboratory up there. And some of the things that are being understood are that there's different kinds of bone, really. And even though I came back with, personally, the same amount of bone as what I left with, and mostly in all these places, it doesn't mean that my bones didn't change. In fact, they probably did. And that's part of understanding that whole jigsaw puzzle.
You spoke in a very entrepreneurial and almost business development way about the cancellation of the Shuttle program. You suggest that actually the way things are working right now in the U.S. relationship with Russia and the use of the Soyuz transporters is actually an ideal scenario. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
I don't know if I would call it ideal, but I like to live in the present. We are where we are. I would say ideal is that we always have a vehicle, to launch from U.S. soil, just because I think that we are a great leader in the space exploration game, and I think for good reason. So since that's not our circumstance right now, since it was, I think, the right time to retire the space shuttle, and it is the right time to be transferring responsibility for things that NASA knows how to do. We know how to get people up to space. We know how to get stuff up to space, up to the space station. And so we're transferring that responsibility to the commercial partners who can actually do it candidly in a more flexible and more innovative way that is going to be a better use of our nation's resources. And at the same time, it lets NASA focus on exploration, which is our charter, focusing on the things that we don't know how to do, which is getting beyond low Earth orbit, being able to stay there, and being able to go on even to places like Mars.
What about the future of space exploration then as it stands right now in the United States? What is it that you hope was the one message that the students could take away from your lecture today?
I like to just correct, I think, a wrong impression that's out there in just sort of the general media. Even my own mom just said, "Katie, isn't it terrible the space program is over? What are you going to do now?" And the space program is at a really exciting point where we are focusing on these further goals like the moon, like Mars, and also having the commercial partners bring things and people up and down to space. So it's a really exciting time, but any time is a time of change, and that's why it's a little bit of a difficult time. So I was glad to educate the students about what's really going on. And to me, I actually never worry really about the future of space exploration. Because when you think about the students that were here and you see the look in their eye and the fact that they made time in their busy class day to be here, it's because people are going to explore. We actually just can't stop them. And we just have to make sure that they're armed with the right tools to be part of that future. And those tools are science, technology, engineering, math. And I like to throw some languages and some art in there too.
Tell us about what prompted the initiative to bring Dr. Coleman to the Barrett Honors College to conduct a lecture at the 2012 TEDx.
Well, Cady Coleman is a legend among astronauts, so when she allowed that she would be willing to come to Arizona and she wanted to present that scarf that had flown 93 million miles or so to Justice O'Connor, I thought maybe it would be a good occasion for her to make a repeat visit. She has been here before. It's her second time to visit the Barrett Honors College. So if she was willing to do it, I thought it would be great for the students to get the chance to meet this inspirational astronaut.
You're a patron to the university, a three-time alum, and I don't know if enough people out there know this, you also are a certifiable astronaut. Now, what is the message that you'd hope the students be able to take away from this unique lecture and experience of meeting a legendary astronaut?
I guess the best lesson is learn as much as you can, become expert in things you thought you'd never need to know, but become expert in lots of different things because you never know what opportunity life will present. And in the future, it's going to require even more well-rounded backgrounds and understandings to do the kinds of things that will be offered in the future. So Cady Coleman didn't think she was going to need physics, but to be an astronaut, a lot of what she's been doing has been involving physics, and she's applied that learning from her high school and her college years to service 225 miles above the surface of the Earth.
Now, I know that you obviously have a relationship with NASA, but if you could also speak at a greater umbrella purpose, what do you think are the benefits of Arizona State University having a working relationship with NASA, and what could both organizations benefit from that relationship? If you can and want to speak to those matters, what are some of the projects that you think Arizona State University can particularly help NASA develop, and what could NASA's relationship with us bring to ASU?
It's wonderful to see the increasing partnership between Arizona State University and NASA. There are people here at ASU that are working closely with NASA executives and with the scientists at NASA, and the folks at NASA are increasingly looking to Arizona State to get insights and advice and partnerships on projects that are being conducted by NASA. Our Mars rovers, the work that Phil Christensen has done, the work of Lori Leshing, who left ASU to go to Goddard, the Space Center outside of Washington, D.C., and has continued up the roles at NASA and now on into our own academic leadership roles. Arizona State and NASA have been partners in the past, and it's a growing partnership that benefits students, faculty, and the community.